Hey guys, Pitmaster here. I have two lessons that I took away from UFC 191. There's plenty you can look for them, little tips from each fight, how you can bring it into your martial art realm, whether you're a traditional martial artist, a UFC contender. Watching fights is a great way to pick up on stuff. Um, and the lessons that you can learn in a fight you can bring back to your dojo or your school or your gym or whatever and use them. Sometimes it's good to learn from other people's mistakes and other people's victories as well as your own. So with that said, I do that every week after the fights. So I take in lessons from that previous UFC and I'm going to bring them to you. I'm going to bring them into my brain, calculate them up, and then spit them back out to you guys. So this UFC 191, there's a lot of lessons learned, but there's two main ones that I took from this fight, and I'm going to tell you about them. And they're at the exact opposite solar or polar ends. Okay. Number one, do not overtrain. We've talked about this before. You want to just hit your right below your peak. But once you go over it, it's a slippery slope because you not only physically is your timing off and you're a little bit slower, you're a little bit weaker, you're not as dynamic, but even worse than that, mentally, you don't have that drive. As soon as you pass peak and you start the overtraining area, you wake up in the morning, you don't even want to go to the gym. You just feel blah. You feel flat. And I feel that's what happened to John Dodson. I feel like he was a little bit overtrained for that fight. The first fight was a lot more competitive. And I'm not going to take anything away from Mighty Mouse because after that performance and his previous performances of late, I think there's an argument to say that he's could be the best fighter pound for pound on the planet. I mean, this guy does everything right. And I mean, not only does everything right, he has perfect strategies. And I mean, I think he's great. I think his trainer, Matt Hume, is I think after that performance, I could say he's, if not one of the best trainers on the planet today. I mean, just those two guys work together so well. But anyway, I think John Dodson was just a little bit overtrained. I think you just could see it. I mean, he was like just a beat behind Mighty Mouse all the time. He was just a beat behind him. You could tell he just didn't have his usual John Dodson, dynamic, animated fighting style. He just seemed like he was flat. And I'm just gonna chalk that up to I think he was a little overtrained. And so that's what I think. Lesson number one. Peak, but once you hit right above peaking, you're overtraining. Be very careful about overtraining. Once you get there, you have to pull back. It's not the end of the camp. If you're overtraining, and this is a traditional martial artist too, if you just push too hard every day without taking a day off, always putting too much volume in your workouts, like an hour and a half, you always have to go more and more and more, you're going to overtrain. Whether you're a UFC contender or a traditional martial artist, train right up until you feel great and then pull back. And days when you just don't feel like training, not because you're lazy, but just don't feel like it and you can actually feel that you're pushing a little too hard, take the day off. There's nothing wrong with taking a day off. So watch it. You want to always stay here, whether you're a traditional martial artist or a UFC fighter training for a fight, you want to stay right under peak. And be very, very cautious about going past it. And if you start to feel it, just pull back. Take a day off. That's how you cure overtraining, is take a day off. Rest. Okay? Recuperate. All right. With that said, that's number one. Do not overtrain. Lesson number two, on the opposite side of that spectrum, is don't undertrain. Don't be lazy. Push. When you're training, whether that workout is 10 minutes or an hour, while you're training, push it. Push it all the way to your max. Don't be scared to push it until you can't push anymore. make sure you check with a doctor. I'm not liable for that. So make sure your cardiovascular system's in good shape. But when you saying it is, if you're training, push every workout to the max. Okay? When you're doing burpees, do as many as you can. Don't just do them and then so you can look good. Do them so you're getting in the best shape of your life. Because when you get in that cage or somebody jumps you on the street, if you're not in that high intensity dynamic conditioning, you're going to fail. You need to be in top shape. You need to push. You're a martial artist. Okay? And you need to push. I feel Frank Mir didn't push as hard. He didn't look like he did. And during the fight, it just looked like he was kind of, the gas wasn't in the tank. And I feel like if he trained a little harder and pushed his intensity, not necessarily his volume, but pushed the intensity while he was training, I think he would have been more intense in the fight. When you push your intensity harder in the workouts, that's how you're going to fight. If you just kind of do your push-ups, jog, do your burpees real slow, hit the bag, real easy, that's how you're going to fight. Whether somebody jumps you and it's life or death, or you're in the cage and you got a title on the line. That is how you're going to fight. Don't ever think you can train easy and then get in the fight and fight hard. The gas won't be there. No matter, your mind is going to say push harder, but your body's going to say, well, you fucking should have trained me harder when we were in the gym. Now, guess what, asshole? I'm not going to give back to you. Okay? So you need to build up that gas in your tank. You need to push your hardest when you're training. That way, when you need it, it's there. Okay? So those are my 2 lessons. Number 1, don't overtrain. Number 2, don't undertrain. Thanks for coming.